Hello everyone, welcome to SIG Autoscaling's weekly meeting for Monday the 2nd of September 2024. We've got one new item on the agenda. Marco.
Oh yeah, that's fine. So yeah, somewhat recently Kubernetes added support for so-called native sidecars, which is like integrated into the spec as init containers that just keep on running and don't easily terminate, right? And previously, or like currently, VPA just ignores init containers and only focuses on containers, which I think leads to two things. One is we have a bug report already open from someone who uses native sidecars and found a huge amount of unnecessary log statements where like the metrics cannot be added to the internal container state because VPA doesn't track them. And that's just annoying, but technically not a problem, right? But it's probably problematic for people who make use of the limit ranger plugin to define pod-based limits, because like VPA tries to adjust the recommendations according to the defined limits or quotas, and then does not take into account if there is like init containers already defined consuming resources, right? So pods might become unschedulable as a consequence and might be rejected by that plugin. So like in general, I opened an issue to discuss like, should VPA like be able to deal somehow with native sidecars, or are we just telling people, well, if you're using those, it's like just not working, or yeah. Yeah, so I opened that issue, I linked in there to start the discussion, and maybe people already have some opinions or like ideas what the best way to tackle this would be. Yeah, in that issue that the person opened regarding the unnecessary log statements, my idea was to tackle this in two steps. Like first, try to get rid of the log statements by somehow making it, like tracking it inside the VPA that this specific container is an init container. We're just getting metrics for it. Like from getting the pod metrics, I don't think there is a way to understand that this is an init container initially, right? The metrics endpoint just doesn't care. It's a container. So we would need to like track this internally, or we are just fine with those unnecessary log statements. And then like next step would be the probably longer discussion around like how should we handle native sidecars.
I mean, I feel like we should solve it. Like that's a fair amount of log statements. I can definitely see that being an annoyance for users.
Yeah, I think currently it's not that big of an issue, given that this was promoted to beta in 1.29, and I'm not seeing that the big sidecar injecting frameworks or like toolkits have already switched to like native sidecars, right? But once, let's say, I don't know, Istio or whatever will switch to that approach, this will get interesting. More and more people start using this stuff.
Yeah, but it also seems like fixing excessive logging. As I think you have a good plan there, because I think fixing excessive logging should generally not be super hard. I mean, we as VPA should be able to tell it's an init container, and there is I imagine there is multiple places where we could filter this out, like on the like even in the logging path, if that's the only solution. Basically, we could have a logging wrapper that just discards this, right, or something along those lines. But then how to actually handle them properly becomes a more difficult question. So kind of doing the logging one, which I don't think it requires any sort of bigger design, just sort of figuring out how to do this in the code. First, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess for the fixing the logging stuff, probably a PR would be sufficient, and for the other part, I think discussion in the issue is probably the right way. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if any of you is like already making a bigger use of native sidecars, so that would be also a good opinion if you have some mileage already on that feature, then that would be nice. Otherwise, yeah, let's see. Yeah, I guess that's that point.
Thanks. Unless anyone else has got anything more on that. Pratik. Oh. Yeah.
Hey, hi everyone. So I think I got one issue, and that's what I mentioned in the agenda. So that we have that VPA recommender performance. I think in the script section, the in the hack, and we have a sample. I think config there. So I was trying that, and I found out like it's not changing the, like you can say, even after VPA object get created, right? After some time it's changed the status to true, and we get the like CPU and memory limits assigned, but that is not happening in this. What I observed, like I think when we pass the parameter, I think in the performance we are passing that, it is not happening, but in the same cluster in the default deployment without any like it's working fine, like without any issue. So when I define like a CPU, it's works, but in other case it does not happens. So I provided that I think one of the screenshot, if you see that so firstly it was working, and in the second there is like we are not getting like a CPU memory, and even the status is not getting updated even after 5 minutes. But in the first scenario it was working with the default, and yeah, I think this is all. And this I attached the log. So this log in the, when we get the VPA recommender performance pod, that there it's like I'm getting this issue, but in the default deployment it works fine. Like I'm not getting anything like adding metric sample for container error adding. So just wanted to like get some idea and like help on this.
Could you paste the output of your VPA spec on this issue as well?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I can do.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so and that spec was in auto mode. I was trying, and I can add that. That I can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think without immediate reproduction, not certain.
So Marco, were you talking? I saw you moving, but you're on mute.
Only to myself. But thanks for catching it.
Just checking.
I was trying to make sense of what's actually happening in that issue. I didn't have a look at it before, so so my understanding is you took what's there in like our deploy folder, renamed it, and then executed the hack VPA process YAMLs script, and that's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think we defined one at one of the line. We defined like which like services we want to deploy. And what I observed like is I think the script is calling that and then iterating through the services and applying that YAML. So I wanted to test the performance one, so I just changed the change VPA recommender to the VPA recommender performance, and then executed that. So installation wise, it's going fine. Pod is also coming fine, and like, but because I posted that, I think pod is also up. But when I apply the spec, create a VP object, it's not getting. I think reconciliation is happening, but the CPU memory and status is not getting changed.
Right, and those error messages, what you're having is
Yeah.
errors regarding the containers for your workload, right? So that would be also interesting if anything changed about your workload. Because like if containers are renamed, then
I think the pods were running. There is no change in that. Only change thing is like I created a VP object after that for the deployment. That deployment.
okay, yeah. So I guess like the other missing YAML files would be interesting, like configuration of the VPA object.
Yeah.
And then let's see.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all we had for this week. Guess just an update. I might try to put a message in the Slack channel last week anyway, but yeah, CA 131.0 was released last week. So anyone who's waiting for that can now make use of that. Anything else that anyone wants to raise?
So I've seen the question on the Slack channel about the 131.0 in Helm chart. Is that something you'll be looking at?
Yeah. I can raise a PR this evening, or I can Jack. I know Jack commented on it, and he'll.
Oh yeah, he commented to do it tomorrow.
Anyway, so yeah.
Okay. So it's probably going to happen later this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Nothing else from anyone else? Cool. In that case, thanks very much, everyone, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.